Should you buy a house in Ipswich this year? I'm going to show you the risks of buying a house in Ipswich, including flood, crime, and underground mine shafts. In Ipswich, if you buy the wrong property, you could end up with a house with moving walls, cracks appearing, and a sinkhole appearing in your backyard. Yeah, this actually happened in someone's backyard. So by then, you're going to know where to buy in Ipswich, where to avoid, and the question I've been asked a lot lately, if you're better off buying a house in Ipswich, getting some land, or potentially just packing up and looking at a unit in Brisbane.
Welcome to the Buying Your First Home podcast, your personal guide through the Australian housing market. Here we tackle the big questions and the small details that come up when buying your first home. From financial prep to finding the right neighbourhood, we're here to ensure that you've got all the knowledge at your fingertips. So let's take the first step towards unlocking the door to your new home.
So let's start with a quick bird's eye view of the Ipswich market. The median house price in Ipswich is currently $698,000, which represents a huge increase of over 29.4% over the past 12 months. For units, the median house price sits at $412,000, up 16% in the same period. Houses in Ipswich are selling really quickly, with a median days on market at just 36 days, and units are taking a little bit longer at 44 days. These numbers paint a pretty clear picture of a rapidly growing market driven by two main factors. Firstly, rapid gentrification in some areas, and secondly, an influx of younger families and first home buyers, mostly because of that price point. So Ipswich is clearly an up-and-coming property market for both home buyers and investors, but we need to address the elephant in the room. Safety. Ipswich has long had a reputation for being a high crime area, which naturally concerns potential home buyers because you've got to live there, and even investors because you're questioning, well, what kind of tenant am I going to get in this property? But is this reputation justified today? Having grown up in Brisbane, I know a lot of people have preconceived notions about Ipswich, based on outdated information or just even hearsay. So let's cut through the noise and look at the hard data so you can make some decisions based on facts and not fear. Before I jump into the specific suburbs, let's talk about what I'm doing here and why it matters to you. I've gathered a ton of information from a heap of reliable sources: government stats, real estate agent records, environmental assessments, you name it. I'm going to present this data to you straight without any biases on area or the people living there. But here's something to keep in mind. Data is incredibly useful, but it doesn't always tell the whole story of a neighborhood. The data is not going to capture the sense of community, the local vibe, or how an area might change in the future. What might look like a concern on the numbers could actually be the perfect fit for your needs. Remember, neighborhoods are always evolving, and an area facing challenges today might be on the verge of a major turnaround tomorrow. So as we go through some of these numbers and the findings, just keep these points in mind. This information is a starting point for your research and not the final word. Always consider your own thorough investigation and consider getting a professional advice, maybe a buyer's agent, before making any major decisions. I definitely suggest visiting these areas for yourself at different times of the day to get a real feel for the place. And chat to locals, even real estate agents in the specific suburbs you're looking at, to understand the area inside out. How you use this information is completely up to you. So to give you a complete picture of Ipswich suburbs, I've looked at 4 key factors that can make or break a neighborhood. Firstly, I've looked at crime rates. I know this is a big concern. I've had some comments on other videos, and I've dug into local police data to understand the safety levels across different areas. I've looked at historical and current property values to spot neighbourhoods that are on the rise and which might be struggling. I've also considered how the close suburbs are to an industrial area. This can impact livability and future growth. And lastly, infrastructure quality. I've assessed things like road conditions, schools, public facilities to gauge overall development in each area. By combining these factors, I've created a well-rounded view of each suburb. This helps identify not just the current state of each area, but also the potential for future growth. Remember, a great neighbourhood isn't just about low crime or high property values. It's about finding the right balance of all these elements to suit your needs. Back in the day, Ipswich was known for their coal mines, so you need to look out for that because flooding over the years has caused some issues. Subsides can also apply to specific suburbs, so there's a bunch of maps that can help you look at that and check that as part of your search. I'll include a link below. Let's look at the crime stats for Ipswich compared to nearby cities. These scores are on a scale of 0 to 100, with the lower number being less crime. Ipswich is 41, Brisbane 33, and Logan 49 out of 100. So as you can see, Ipswich falls between Brisbane and Logan in terms of overall crime rates. So while it's true Ipswich has a higher crime score than Brisbane, it's actually lower than Logan, which might surprise some people. But you need to drill down to this data to look at specific suburbs. In one Ipswich suburb, your chance of being a victim of crime is 1 in 16, but a few kilometres away, it drops to 1 in 1,000. Because crime rates can vary significantly depending on where you are. So looking at the stats and crunching the numbers, I've identified 3 suburbs in Ipswich you might want to avoid or think twice about when investing if you're concerned about crime stats. Now remember, this doesn't mean all areas are bad. Every suburb has its own unique charm and potential, but based on the crime rates of the city, property trends, industrial proximity, and infrastructure quality, these 3 areas have raised some red flags. First up, we have Ipswich. Yep, the namesake suburb itself. Then there's Redbank, and there's finally Buval. In a tick, I'm going to break down each of these suburbs, looking at why I've made it on the approach with caution list. I'm going to dive into the specific challenges each area faces, but also highlight a few silver linings and potential for future improvement. All right, let's kick things off with Ipswich, the suburb, not the whole city. This is the heart of Ipswich, the CBD that gives the entire region its name. Ipswich has a pretty rich history, so it dates back to the 1820s. If you've ever visited the city, you can see heaps of that heritage in the beautiful old buildings and charming streetscapes. The CBD itself has a lot going for it. There's businesses, shops, cafes, restaurants, and some parks, as well as the Ipswich Art Gallery. One of the big draws to the city is its connectivity. Ipswich train station is right in the middle of things, meaning you can get to Brisbane relatively easy. And for families, there's several good schools in and out in the area. The real estate market has been pretty hot there too, with some impressive growth in recent years, from traditional Queenslanders to new apartments, which gives you plenty of options. So on the surface, Ipswich looks pretty appealing, but as we dig deeper, we're going to uncover some challenges the area is facing. So first off, Ipswich Central has been given a crime rank of 100 out of 100. Now, this isn't the kind of score you want to be at the top of. This ranking means Ipswich Central has one of the highest crime rates compared to other areas analysed. To put this into perspective, in an area of just 4.18 square kilometres with a population of 2,400 people, there were 1,667 reported crimes. That translates to 675 crimes per 1,000 people. Looking at the trends over the past 5 years, we can see some mixed signals. The number of crimes has dropped significantly in 2021, which is good news, but we've seen a slight uptick since then. More concerningly, violent crimes have been on the trend upwards over the past 5 years. On a slightly more positive note though, property crimes have generally been decreasing, although there was a small increase in the most recent year. Now, how does this compare to the rest of Queensland? Well, the numbers are stark. So like I mentioned, in Ipswich, you're looking at 675 crimes per 1,000 people. Compare that to around 100 crimes per 1,000 people in Queensland and 80 crimes per 1,000 people in Australia as a whole. It's a similar story for violent and property crimes in Ipswich, which is significantly higher in both categories. Breaking down further, the most common types of crime in Ipswich are disorderly and offensive conduct, followed by drug dealing and trafficking, theft, assault, and property damage. This gives you a bit of an idea on the types of issues the area is grappling with. What does this mean for you as a potential resident? Well, in Ipswich, the chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime is 1 in 16. To put that in perspective, it's 1 in 131 in Queensland and 1 in 95 in Australia. For property crime, in Ipswich, there's a 1 in 5 chance, compared to 1 in 22 in Queensland and 1 in 28 in Australia. Now get it, these numbers might seem alarming and they are cause for careful consideration, but it's important to remember that the statistics don't tell the whole story. Crime can vary significantly from street to street, and these figures represent the entire Ipswich Central area. I think what these numbers tell us is that safety and security should be one of your top priorities if you're considering buying in Ipswich Central. You're going to want to take extra precautions to secure your property and be aware of your surroundings and even look at local community safety initiatives. But let's shift gears and look at Ipswich's property market. First, let's look at houses. The median house price in Ipswich is currently sitting at $712,000. Now, that's where it gets interesting. That price represents a staggering 29.4% increase over the past 12 months. To put in perspective, if you bought a median price house in Ipswich a year ago, you'd be looking at a gain of $160,000 on paper. That's not just growth, that's growth on steroids. Looking at the 5-year trend, we can see that it isn't just a recent phenomenon. House prices in Ipswich have been on the rise since 2019, with a particular sharp increase over the past year. This growing market could be attractive for investors longer term. Looking at units and apartments, the story is similar. The median unit price in Ipswich is $445,000, up 16% in the past year. That's a pretty solid increase, but not as dramatic as houses. Looking at weekly asking prices over time, all property types have seen significant price growth since 2020. But there has been some volatility in recent months. The asking price of houses has dropped slightly and units have jumped. Looking at long-term changes, the picture's looking pretty positive. Over the past 3 years, we've seen double-digit growth in all categories. Demand to supply ratio gives us insights into market trends, and for unit prices, we've seen a bit of a roller coaster. There's a peak in unit prices in early 2024, but looks like it's cooled off, indicating a bit of a balanced market. Houses tell a completely different story. The DSR has been more volatile, ranging from 30 to 60. After a peak in 2023, we've seen a bit of a downward trend with the DSR at 35 to 40. This suggests a softening market in houses compared to units. But what are the factors that are shaping Ipswich's property landscape? It's a bit of a mixed bag, so let's break it down. On the positive side, Ipswich has some exciting developments in the pipeline. We're talking about major infrastructure upgrades that could be game changers for the area. There's a $3.4 billion Ipswich to Toowoomba rail project, which could open up more commuting options. Then we've got the $900 million Ipswich to Springwood railway line and a $1.7 billion to speed up the Ipswich to Brisbane connection. But it's not just about trains. Ipswich is also seeing some serious investments in roads too, with planned upgrades to Ipswich's motorway and Centenary motorway. The city's also expanding itself as far as health and education, with new health hubs and universities popping up, which could bring more jobs and more demand for housing. But there are also challenges too. One of the big ones is the potential for growing pains. All this rapid development could lead to some big congestion if the infrastructure doesn't keep pace with the population growth. There's also the tricky business of zoning and planning regulations. They could put a squeeze on future development, potentially limiting housing supply just as demand's ramping up. It's a bit of a delicate balance. And we can't really ignore the elephant in the room, the flood risks. Parts of Ipswich are prone to flooding, which is something any potential buyer investor needs to be aware of. And it's not the immediate risk. Flood-prone areas can also face higher insurance periods and lower property values in the long run. All right, so let's wrap up what we've learned about Ipswich Central. On the crime front, we're looking at higher than average rates, which is something you need to be aware of. The area ranks 100 out of 100 for crime. But remember, stats don't tell the whole story and crime can vary from street to street. When it comes to property, Ipswich Central is showing some impressive growth. House prices have shot up 29.4% in the past year, hitting a median price of $712,000. Units aren't far behind, up 16% to $445,000. It's a pretty hot market with demand outstripping supply, especially for houses. The demand-supply ratio has been a bit of a roller coaster, seems to be cooling off recently, and it's looking like a bit of a balanced market leaning towards sellers, particularly for units. Looking ahead, Ipswich Central has some major infrastructure projects in the pipeline, rail, roads, etc., that could boost the local economy. But there could be some growing pains, so be aware of that. And some major risks with flooding and subsidence, so make sure you check out all those council maps before you start putting down offers on Ipswich Central. So what's the verdict? Ipswich Central is a suburb that's got a high growth potential, but it comes with its share of risk. For investors, it could offer a high capital growth scenario, but you need to choose your location wisely. For home buyers, you might find some good value here, but do your due diligence, especially regarding safety and flood risks. Ipswich Central is not a one-size-fits-all suburb. It's a place of contrast where careful research and local knowledge can make all the difference. Whether it's the right fit for you depends on your circumstances, risk tolerance, and what you're looking for in a property. Next up is Redbank. Redbank is about 10 kilometres east of the Ipswich CBD and about 25 kilometres southwest of Brisbane. It's actually pretty well placed if you want a bit of a mix of both cities. So what's drawing people to Redbank? Well, it's got a bit of everything. You find a mix of older character-filled homes with new developments, catering different tastes and budgets. The Redbank Plaza Shopping Centre is a major draw card offering shopping and entertainment options right on your doorstep. And if you like nature, there's also the Redbank Plains Recreation Reserve with heaps of green space for outdoor activities. And let's not forget connectivity. With its own train line on the Ipswich Rosewood line, commuting's pretty easy. Redbank's seen a lot of changes over the past couple of years, transforming from a semi-rural area to quite a bustling suburb with modern amenities. But is Redbank the gem you've been looking for, or are there challenges waiting? Redbank has been assigned a crime rank of 54 out of 100. Remember, the higher the number means the more crimes. So Redbank sits around in the middle in terms of crime rates compared to other areas. Looking at the numbers, Redbank has a population of 2,931 people in an area of 8 kilometres squared. In the past year, there are 1,064 crimes, which translates to about 363 crimes per 1,000 people. So this is still significantly higher than the state and national averages. The 5-year trends also show some concerning patterns. The crimes have increased steadily since 2021. Both violent crimes and property crimes show an upward trend and sharp increase in the last few years. Breaking down the types of crimes, well, theft is by far the most common, with 412 instances, followed by drug dealing and trafficking, 179, and other issues with disorderly conduct, traffic offences, and property damage. So what does it mean for residents? In Redbank, the chance of being a victim of violent crime is 1 in 44. That's a lot higher than the Queensland average, which is 1 in 131, and the average in Australia, which is 1 in 95. For property crime, it's also pretty concerning, about 1 in 5 in Redbank, compared to 1 in 22 in Queensland and 1 in 28 in Australia. If you are concerned about crime, these are things to think about, because based on these numbers, Redbank is facing some challenges with crime, particularly with property crime. As I said earlier, though, crime can vary from street to street. These stats represent the whole suburb of Redbank. So if you are considering Redbank, it's worth considering specific suburbs. If you're looking at streets, try and chat to the neighbours to see what it's like in that specific street. In Redbank, the median house price currently stands at $590,000. The price represents a 9.3% increase over the past 12 months. So to put that in perspective, if you bought a median price house in Redbank a year ago, you'd be looking at about a $50,000 gain in value. That's a pretty solid increase, showing that the Redbank market is on the up. Looking at the 5-year trend, we can see that Redbank's housing market has been in constant upward path since August 2019, with some big changes post-COVID in 2021. Looking at units and apartments, the story kind of gets more interesting. The median price in Redbank is currently $422,000, which is a 25% increase over the past year. That's a crazy jump, outpacing the growth we've seen in the housing market. Looking at some of the long-term price trends for Redbank, the data gives us a bit of a picture on how the market's performing over time. Over the past 12 months, we've seen a 16.9% increase in asking prices. Looking at the 3-year time frame, there's been growth of 20.7%, and over 7 years, house prices have risen by 10%. Looking at units, like I said earlier, the past 12 months have shown remarkable growth of 26%. Over 3 years, unit prices have increased by 23%, and 7-year growth is 8%. So the figures paint a pretty strong picture. The unit market in particular is showing some exceptional performance over the past year, outpacing the housing market. The demand to supply ratio in Redbank has shown some fluctuations, ranging between 40 to 60. And the DSR for houses in Redbank has been slightly more stable with units, fluctuating between 45 to 60. So overall, both units and houses in Redbank show signs of having been stronger in the past, particularly in 2023, but have moderated a bit since, so at a bit of a more balanced state in mid-2024. This suggests that while there is still some strong demand in the market, it's not as intense as it was during the peaks observed in previous years. One of the big drawcards of Redbank is its access to public open spaces. Like other areas in southeast Queensland, like Noosa or the Gold Coast, there's heaps of green space in Redbank. Transport infrastructure is another major drawcard. Major projects like the Cunningham Highway, Centenary Motorway, and Warrego Highway are being expanded and upgraded. Redbank's also benefiting from enhanced sports facilities as upgrades on the Redbank Plains Recreation Reserve, including a new sports field and modern clubhouse. So there's some positive, but there's also some negatives. One key concern for some buyers is Redbank's proximity to industrial zones. The suburb is right near some industrial areas, which can be both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it provides employment opportunities, but on the other, it can add to noise, traffic congestion, and potential air quality concerns. If you're looking at properties close to these industrial areas, you need to keep that in mind. Another consideration is the strain on infrastructure due to all this rapid growth. As more people move to the Ipswich region, including Redbank, there's going to be more pressure on existing roads, transport, and utilities. And while there's been some upgrades, there could be some pressure during peak periods. And keep in mind, while there's ongoing development of Redbank to expand and make improvements, that also these improvements could lead to disruptions and inconvenience. There's going to be construction, temporary road closures, and increased traffic that can be a bit of a side effect for some of these major projects. Looking at flooding risk, Redbank is located near the Brisbane River and several creeks, which makes the suburb pretty prone to flooding. Historical flood maps indicate that lots of low-lying areas in Redbank have experienced flooding, most notably in 2011 and 2022. So to sum things up, Redbank is number 2 on our list on places to potentially avoid in Ipswich, and there's a few reasons why it's not in our top recommendations. The positives are Redbank is located just 10 k's from Ipswich and 25 k's from Brisbane, but its proximity to industrial zones comes with some downsides. Crime is another concern. Redbank has a higher than average crime rates, particularly when it comes to property crimes. And with all this growth, there's going to be further strains on infrastructure, which could mean traffic congestion, longer commute times, and general struggles, especially during peak hours. And let's not forget the flooding in some areas in Redbank. So while there are some positives like green spaces and a growing property market, there are some negatives that you need to consider. The third list on a suburb you may want to avoid is Buval. Buval just sits a few kilometres east of Ipswich and only 30 kilometres from Brisbane, making it a pretty convenient location for those who want easy access while enjoying a quieter suburban lifestyle. It's definitely an area known for affordability, which is a big draw card for home buyers and investors looking for value. The suburb has a mix of older Queenslanders and newer developments, offering something for different tastes and budgets. The Buval Fair Shopping Centre is a major hub providing plenty of retail and dining options, making daily errands pretty easy. Buval also has good transport options with its own train station on the Ipswich line, making commuting to Brisbane and Ipswich pretty straightforward. There's also a good range of schools, parks and community facilities which make it pretty appealing to families. But there's some challenges you want to be aware of. Buval has a crime rank of 51 out of 100, which places it slightly above the middle in terms of crime rates. Buval is home to a population of 2,700 people, and over the past year, there have been 941 reported crimes, translating to about 346 crimes per 1,000 people. This is considerably higher than both the state and national averages, which could be a concern if safety is something that you're worried about. The 5-year trend in Buval shows a mixed picture. While the total number of crimes has decreased significantly since 2020, there's been an upward trend in violent crimes, which is a bit worrying. Property crimes too have started to seem a rise after a period of decline, signalling that crime is becoming a bit more of an issue in the area. Looking at the types of crimes in Buval, theft is by far the most common offence with 439 instances. Drug dealing and trafficking followed, 138, highlighting a pretty big issue in the city. For residents, the chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime in Buval is about 1 in 49, which is much higher than the Queensland average, which is 1 in 131, and the national average of 1 in 95. Property crime as well is pretty concerning, 1 in 5 chance of becoming a victim compared to 1 in 22 for Queensland. So these stats highlight some serious safety concerns for Buval. If you're looking to live there, you really want to spend a bit of time researching that particular neighbourhood, asking the neighbours what it's like. So looking at the property market trends, the median house price in Buval sits at $573,000. There's been a huge increase of 23% over the past 12 months. So if you bought a median priced house in Buval a year ago, you'd be looking at a gain of $115,000 in value. Just insane. Looking at the 5-year trend, we can see that Buval's increased steady growth since 2019, particularly with the sharp increase over the past 2 years. Looking at the unit market, the median price in Buval is $370,000, so shows a massive increase of 22% over the past year. In the past year, houses in Buval have shown strong growth. 3 bedrooms in particular have surged 25%. Over the past 3 years, the asking price of a house showed pretty big growth, 26% annual increases for all houses. The unit market's been a bit more modest with 8 to 10% growth in asking prices over the past year. So the property market sees some impressive growth, particularly in the house suburb, which has outperformed the unit market consistently across all timeframes. So this trend could suggest that Buval is becoming increasingly attractive to home buyers, especially those seeking large family homes. For house in Buval, the DSR has been relatively stable over the last few years, typically ranging from 45 to 55. Remember, a DSR above 50 suggests that demand is outstripping supply, which tends to push prices up. Currently, the DSR is sitting at 53, indicating a market that slightly favors sellers and potentially increases in price. The unit market shows a bit more volatility. Currently, the DSR for units is 47, suggesting a bit more of a balanced market. Overall, the DSR figures align with strong property growth, which we've seen both in the house and unit markets. Buval has several positive infrastructure factors that make it appealing for residents and investors, despite some of the challenges I've mentioned. Firstly, Buval is incredibly well connected when it comes to transportation. The suburb has its own train station on the Ipswich line, making it easy for commuters to get to Brisbane and Ipswich. As far as amenities, like I said, there's a Buval Fair shopping centre, which is a central hub, bunch of retail stores, supermarkets, etc. And there's a range of schools, parks, and community facilities. But one of my main concerns is the strain existing infrastructure due to all this suburb growth. As the population increases, there's going to be mounting pressure on roads and public transportation. Another issue is aging infrastructure in some parts of the suburb. While there are ongoing developments, many of the public facilities and utilities are a bit older and may require upgrades as the population grows. And like in Redbank, Buval's proximity to industrial areas and transportation routes can come with its challenges. Higher levels of noise, pollution, if you're near those industrial areas, can be a bit of a risk. And I guess while Buval has good access to public transport, the frequency and reliability of services, particularly outside of peak times, can be a bit of a concern. Buval's also a suburb where flooding risk is pretty high. This can have a pretty big impact on your property, so you want to make sure you do a flood map search before you even start putting offers in. So Buval might first seem like it's really a great location. It's affordable and it's a convenient mix of Brisbane and Ipswich. The suburb offers a bit of a mix of types of homes and a pretty good shopping centre. But as with some of those other areas, it struggles with high crime rates, especially with property crimes, theft, which could impact the area's safety. The chances of being a victim to a crime here is much higher than both the state and national averages, raising some concerns if you're looking to live there. But despite these issues, Buval's property market has seen some strong growth, particularly in house prices, with demand outstripping supply, making it a seller's market, meaning there's more scope for growth over the next few years. So in summary, while Buval has some attractive features like affordability, good transportation amenities, the high crime rates, infrastructure strain, and flooding risk come with some drawbacks. These factors collectively put Buval third on our list of suburbs to avoid. All right, done with the negative. Let's look at the positives and the suburbs to look at if you're considering buying in the Ipswich area. Tivoli looks like a suburb that sounds out as one of the best options for home buyers in the Ipswich area. Nestled just a short distance from the Ipswich CBD, Tivoli offers a bit of a charm of a quiet residential neighbourhood. Its location makes it pretty appealing to families and individuals looking for a bit of a peaceful place to settle down without having to sacrifice the facilities. All right, so let's look at the crime situation in Tivoli. The suburb has a considerably low crime rate of 10 out of 100, indicating that's much safer than some of those other areas. With a population of around 1,400 people, Tivoli just recorded 95 crimes over the past year, which equates to a crime rate of 65 crimes per 1,000 people, which is a lot lower than the state and national averages. Looking at the specific crimes reported in Tivoli, theft is the most common crime with 23 incidents reported, followed by transport regulation offences and a bit of property damage and drug-related offences. Interestingly, more severe crime like burglary, motor vehicle theft, and assault are pretty rare in Tivoli. So these stats are actually really positive. So it's not all bad news in Ipswich. Tivoli shows a pretty safe profile, especially when it comes to other suburbs in the Ipswich area. Overall, the crime rate remains pretty low, making Tivoli a pretty desirable and safe suburb for potential home buyers and investors. The current median house price in Tivoli is $472,000, showing a modest increase of 3.4%. So this is good news. The steady growth reflects Tivoli's position as a relatively stable, attractive suburb for home buyers. Looking at the 5-year trend, house prices in Tivoli have shown a consistent upward motion with significant appreciation evident from mid-2021. The property market highlights indicate that houses in Tivoli are moving really quickly. The median time on market is just 23 days, combined with the fact that only 13 houses are currently available, making it a really competitive market. Not to mention for investors, the yield is 4.7%, making it pretty attractive. Tivoli's property market has showed some varied growth across different timeframes. Interestingly, the data shows that while Tivoli's property market has shown some strong growth, the rate of appreciation has varied. Demand to supply ratios for Tivoli sits at 48, placing it just above the Australian median average of 47. This shows a bit of a balanced market where supply and demand are equal, with a slight tilt towards demand outstripping supply. The GSR suggests that while the market is competitive, it's not excessively so, offering opportunities for both buyers and sellers. Tivoli is really interesting. It's got a lot going for it as far as infrastructure, making it a pretty good choice for home buyers and investors. First and foremost, Tivoli benefits from its strategic location, just a few kilometres from Ipswich CBD. So this gives you pretty good access to shopping centres, restaurants, healthcare facilities, and even education institutions. Public transport for Tivoli is another major plus. The suburb is well connected by buses that connect to Ipswich and surrounded areas, and the nearby Ipswich train station offers direct access to Brisbane and other major transportation hubs. This makes commuting straightforward and pretty convenient. So while there's lots of positives, there's also some negatives you need to consider. As I've said before, strained infrastructure. As the suburb continues to grow and attract new residents, it could lead to more congestion in the suburb as more people move there and not more done to the roads. As with other areas in Ipswich, proximity to infrastructure is another factor that could impact the desirability. While the suburb itself is pretty residential, there are industrial zones nearby, which could lead to noise and pollution and heavy vehicle access in certain areas. This is mostly applicable if you're looking at homes in the outskirts of the suburb. But the big one, compared to some of those other suburbs we mentioned in Ipswich, is the limited public transportation options. It's definitely not as well served as central Ipswich and Redbank, which have their own train stations, but there are buses available if you need to commute. It could be a good one where you can do a bit of work from home and you could stay largely in the local area. And while Tivoli has lots of green areas and recreational facilities, the overall availability of shopping centres and dining options are pretty limited, so you potentially have to go to central Ipswich to find these. So it can be a bit inconvenient if you prefer to walk rather than drive. Another big one is flood risk. The suburb's proximity to the Bremer River means there's several areas prone to flooding, like you can see on the map. The blue zones, particularly North Tivoli along the riverbanks, and there's some major risks of flooding here. Homes in this area are likely to experience significant flooding during heavy rains or extreme weather events. The main issue here, other than having your home flooded, is increased insurance costs and property damage. Even moderate flooding can cause disruptions and damage, so make sure you take this into consideration if you're looking at properties. So despite some of those negatives, Tivoli actually stands out as our number one pick for the Ipswich area. It offers a bit of a blend of charm, convenience, and safety that makes it a good choice for home buyers and investors. It's located just a short distance from the Ipswich CBD and combines the tranquility of a residential neighbourhood with easy access to the city and amenities. When it comes to safety, Tivoli is amazing. It excels with a low crime rate, particularly with violent crimes, making it one of the safest suburbs in the region. This strong safety profile, compared with the steady property market, reflects Tivoli's stability and attractiveness. But like any suburb, Tivoli has its challenges. So it could be strains on infrastructure due to all the people moving there. Also, the proximity to industrial areas in the outskirts could be a bit of a risk, and flooding needs to be checked out before you even consider making an offer. Thagoona takes our spot as the number 2 pick for Ipswich, and it's easy to see why. The suburb offers a bit of a perfect blend between rural lifestyle and the convenience of both Ipswich and Brisbane. It's just 12 k's southwest of the Ipswich CBD and around 45 k's from Brisbane. Thagoona gives you a bit of a space and tranquility while not making you feel completely isolated. Safety is a pretty big plus for Thagoona. The suburb boasts a crime rank of just 10 in 100, which means it's one of the safest areas you're going to find in the region. Over the past year, there was 21 crimes reported in the entire suburb. Looking at the types of crimes, it's pretty reassuring. The most common offences were minor, with traffic regulation offences leading at 6, followed by theft at 5, and serious crimes like burglary or motor vehicle theft are almost non-existent. Yeah, looking at the property market, Thagoona seems some pretty impressive growth. The median house price stands at $830,000, which marks a significant 25% increase over the past year. If you bought a home a year ago at the median house price, you'd have a gain of around $170,000. Unlike some of those other suburbs, the upward trend isn't a recent development. The 5-year price trend shows consistent growth, particularly over the last few years. For all houses, the current asking price is over $703,000, reflecting a small weekly increase, but there's a bit of fluctuation when we break it down by house type between 3 and 2 bedrooms. For units, the growth has been pretty crazy, with 3-year rates at 16% and 10-year growth rates of 9%. Thagoona offers a pretty solid potential for buyers who are looking for the long haul. Looking at demand to supply, which gives us an insight in how the market is balancing demand with the availability of supply, Thagoona's market is 45, indicating a relatively balanced market. This means there's decent demand, but it's not wildly outplacing supply, which is good news if you're looking to buy without getting caught in a bidding war. Listen, Thagoona stands out really well for infrastructure. This is a really big plus if you're looking at buying here. The suburbs are a pretty short drive from the Ipswich CBD, making it pretty accessible if you need to get access to shops, healthcare, etc. Thagoona is located near some major transportation routes, including the Warrego Highway, which provides a direct link to Brisbane, making it a feasible option if you need to commute to Brisbane and still want that sort of spacious rural living. The nearby Thagoona railway station offers a pretty straightforward commute to Ipswich and Brisbane by train. I think the biggest drawcard here is if you're looking for larger blocks. The suburb is really known for larger blocks of land, giving you room to spread out compared to some of those more densely populated areas, especially around Brisbane. The housing stock here offers a bit of a mix between older character homes and more modern builds. And while there's a lot going for it, there are some challenges you need to be aware of. So unlike more modern developed suburbs, Thagoona doesn't have a larger shopping centre or a wide range of dining and entertainment options on its doorstep. This means that major shopping trips or dining out will mean you have to get in the car and go to Ipswich. This might not be a deal breaker for everyone, but it's something to keep in mind if you want a lot more convenience nearby. As I covered before, another issue is potential strains with new developments happening in the area, people moving there, Could be more traffic and not enough roads to handle those extra population. The other negative is public transport. While it's available, it could be more limited compared to some of those inner city Brisbane areas that will have more regular services. The train service is reliable, but buses are less frequent. And overall, the public transportation network doesn't offer the same level of coverage you might get closer to the city. Looking at flood risk, Thagoona is right near several watercourses, and as a result, it's prone to flooding. As I covered before, you want to do a flood map search before you make any offers on properties in the area. So Thagoona is our second best spot in our pick for Ipswich. It's a nice combination of rural charm and convenience. Just 12 k's from the Ipswich CBD. It offers some bigger properties and pretty peaceful settings. Safety, again, is a standout feature, so it's not all bad in Ipswich, which is worth keeping in mind. And the property market here seems to be on the rise, notably 25% increase in median house price over the past year. Keep in mind, it's not all positives. There are some challenges with local amenity, the public transport, and limited dining options. So Thagoona offers a safe and growing community-focused suburb, making it a great choice for home buyers and investors looking for a bit of a balanced and fulfilling lifestyle in Ipswich. Springfield's our number 3 pick in the Ipswich area, and it's a suburb that combines modern living with excellent infrastructure, making it a great option for home buyers. Located just 30 kilometres southwest of Brisbane, Springfield offers a strategic location with easy access to both Ipswich and Brisbane, making it a prime choice for commuters. Springfield's appeal lies in its master plan layout that ensures that you've got a wide range of amenities, including shopping centres, schools, parks, and recreational facilities. The suburb has had some crazy growth in the last few years, so for anyone that's looking for an area that's looking for a bit of a blend of convenience, growth potential and quality of life, Springfield stands out as a top contender. So if you're considering safety, Springfield boasts a pretty solid reputation with a crime rank of 10 out of 100, indicating it's relatively safe compared to other areas. With a population of over 7,300, Springfield recorded 343 crimes over the past year. The rate is a lot lower compared to surrounding suburbs, making it a relatively safe place to live. Looking at the 5-year trends, Springfield maintained a relatively stable crime rate. The chance of becoming a victim of violent crime in Springfield about 1 in 222, which is a lot lower than Queensland average, which is 131. Theft is the most common offence, with 112 incidents reported in the past year, followed by burglary and incidents and property damage. So these figures suggest that while property crimes are more frequent, they're not at alarming levels and are generally in line with what you might expect in a growing suburban area. So for residents, the low rates of serious crime mean that Springfield offers a secure environment for raising a family or investing in property. The overall crime profile, dominated by minor offences, is not unusual for a suburb experienced growth and development. Springfield's property market has shown strong performance, particularly in the housing segment. The median house price is $790,000, reflecting a 13% increase over the past 12 months. The steady growth has highlighted Springfield's desirability and showing it's pretty competitive. Properties are selling on average in 21 days. The quick turnover rate, coupled with steady price increases, indicates a robust market where demand continues to outstrip supply. When analysing weekly asking prices, Springfield property market continues to demonstrate strong growth across all categories. The asking price is up 3.1% from previous weeks. Over the past 12 months, it's increased 11%. Demand to supply is currently sitting at 58, placing it well above the Australian average, indicating that demand is strong and slightly outstrips supply, creating a really competitive market. For units, DSR is even higher at 63, indicating that unit markets are particularly tightly held with stronger buy demand relative to the available stock. There's heaps of positives too, mostly with this impressive infrastructure. The suburb is part of Greater Springfield area, a master planned community that really focuses on education and connectivity. Residents have access to a wide range of amenities, including the Springfield Central Shopping Centre, which offers retail, dining and entertainment. Education is another draw card. University of Southern Queensland's Springfield campus and a bunch of other secondary schools there offer some great educational opportunities. Springfield is also home to the Mater Private Hospital, providing residents with pretty easy access to healthcare. Springfield's also well connected to Brisbane and Ipswich via the Centenary Highway and Springfield Railway line. This makes commuting straightforward, whether by car or public transport. As with the other ones, I guess there's just, general drawbacks with infrastructure strain as more people move there and ongoing development causing issues in the future. Finally, Springfield enjoys a lower risk compared to a lot of areas in Ipswich thanks to its higher elevation, but there are some pockets near some waterways that you need to be aware of. So I had to limit my list obviously today, but it's important to remember Ipswich is pretty vast, with other suburbs undergoing their own transformations over the past decade. Take Woodend, for example. The suburb has become a bit of a hotspot for young professionals and families from Brisbane, driving up demand, making it one of the most sought after areas. Coal Falls is another suburb experiencing a massive surge in popularity, but this is one that you need to be careful of subsidence, so make sure you do searches before. I can't really cover any suburb in detail, but it's definitely worth looking at some of these other areas if you're considering buying a property in Ipswich. When it comes to buying a property, doing your due diligence is absolutely critical. Whether it's one of the top suburbs, you need to look at each property thoroughly and assess your options. I'm going to include all the links below to the crime stats, flooding risk, the mining maps, and some of the infrastructure to look at. The other tip I really didn't go into detail here is also talk to the locals. There's no better way to get a sense of a neighborhood than speaking to the people who live there. They can provide some pretty good insights into the area. And sometimes you just need to go on the ground. Like if you're looking at Ipswich, you don't want to be too close to the tip because that's the garbage tip, because it can smell like rotten egg and Yeah, sounds pretty nasty. So it can be worth actually getting boots on ground, especially at Ipswich, because there's some pretty unique challenges there. All right, so let's wrap this up with a quick summary. We've taken time to deep dive into Ipswich's real estate. Firstly, there's some areas you might want to think twice about. Topping our list is Ipswich Central. It's the heart of the region, but it's got the highest crime rate we've ever seen. 1 in 16 chance of being a victim of a violent crime. It's also prone to flooding and struggling with rapid growth. Next up is Redbank. It's dealing with rising crime rates, especially property crimes, and closest to industrial areas could be a bit of a concern. Oh, and don't forget the flooding. Rounding up our top 3 to avoid is Buval. While it's not as rough as the first, it's still grappling with some issues around crime, and especially property crime. I think the flood risk there is also a main concern. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are some positive packs out there. Leading them is Tivoli, the suburb, which was a complete standout with the crime rate being super low, steady property market growth, and a great sense of community. It's pretty close to Ipswich CBD, meaning it's convenient. Next up is Thagoona. It's another safe bet with low crime rates and is seeing some impressive growth. It's got a bit more space and could be the right tick for you. And last but not least is Springfield, the master plan community that offers the best of both worlds, low crime rates and strong performers. Buying a team or investment property is a big decision. That's why you want to work with a team of experts at Hunter Galloway. We're the home for home buyers and investors across Australia. If you need any help with your finance, working out the structuring, or just want to bounce some ideas across us, hit us up at huntergalloway.com.au. We'd love to help you out. There's no fees for our service. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope all this data and information helps you. Happy house hunting, and who knows, I might see you around Ipswich soon.